All right, we are joined with the one, the only Jason Belmonte. Brother, how's it going?
Boys, boys, it's doing well. It's doing good. Thanks for having me on your Tour Life show.
Yeah, it's been a while. We communicated a little while ago about potentially coming on. You are our first guest that is not a disc golfer, so congratulations. Um, but yeah, we wanted to spread out a little bit, and bowling gets brought up on this podcast potentially more than any other sport. And I figured, why not have the best bowler in the world on our podcast? So I
Well,
want
listen,
to,
I got to
yeah,
stop
go
you there.
ahead.
I got to stop you there. I'm actually, I shouldn't say I'm a disc golfer myself, but I have played disc golf plenty of times. So I feel like I've got a little insider information about the game that a non-disc golfer might have.
Okay. So you've actually played a decent amount.
I wouldn't say a decent amount. I'm not good at it because the disc is not round enough. It's not spherical enough for me to be really good with it. But I absolutely freaking love it. I really love it. And so there are quite a few bowlers that have their own. I've learned a lot about the sport, about all the different kinds of discs, different courses, different techniques in throwing. So I want to play it more, so I do get a little better at it. And I just love the fact that you know what you can just do it by yourself if you want to have a little time to yourself. It's a relatively quick outing as well. Like regular golf can take quite a while to play. So I love the fact that you can just grab yourself a disc, go to the course, and just get some time to yourself to put some earpods in, listen to some music, and just chill when I don't have to throw a ball down the lane.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there are a lot of similarities, like you just mentioned, between disc golf and bowling. And I think some of the things that we're going to get into here is a little bit how bowling has grown over the last decade or 20 years, let's say, and see where disc golf maybe can improve or things that we're trying to do differently. So I'm really curious about kind of all that side of things, the growth side of the sport. Before we get into that, though, there are a couple like just questions that I think a lot of just average bowlers or average sports people have. And one of that is, what is the average score for like a top pro? Because I think there is a misconception that you guys just go out and bowl 290, 295, 300 like every time. What would be like a good score for a top bowler, a top pro bowler?
Yeah, so let's lay down the parameters on what that means first, okay? And we can use disc golf as an analogy with this too. There are some um, courses that are typically harder than others, okay? And there are different holes as well that are typically harder than others. And so your par score on a difficult hole versus a par score on an easier hole, if you were to ask somebody what your best round is at disc golf, the next question that you probably want to know is, well, where did you play? Right? What was the environment in which you scored that low score at? And then if you know the course and you know the level of difficulty, you can give that a bump up, as in like, wow, I know that's a really tough course. Or you can say, oh yeah, it's a relatively easy course. So like I can see how someone can shoot that low. And the same thing in bowling. So the difference between your game and my game is yours is a visual. I can see the trees. I can see how far the basket away is. I can see the difficulty in how hard it is to get there in one or two. In my game, the oil pattern that I bowl on is invisible, and therefore it's very hard to convey the level of difficulty. So the best way that I can describe it is at a pro level, our environment is the most difficult environment that you can play on, meaning the oil and the way that we spread it across the lane is conducive to very difficult shot making. So if you have a little bit too much speed, the ball won't hook enough. If you have a little too soft a speed, it'll hook too much. If you miss your target by less than a quarter of an inch, you can leave a split. And so you can go to other places, regular houses that don't have tour competitions, where you can bowl faster or slower, you can miss left and right, and the oil pattern will help the ball towards the pocket. So
Mm.
that's the environment that we play on, which is why also when you ask a very specific question about what do we average, our averages sometimes are lower than what you may see from a regular league player. But the environments that we play on are wildly different. And so when I shoot, which I think on my tour, I shouldn't say my tour, on the tour, my average is a high 220s, 228. Between that, I'll score that across the entire season. Some weeks will be a lot higher if the scoring pattern is a little easier. And then other weeks when they're literally impossible, they're just impossible. Your season average will go down. And so when you compare that to a regular league player, I mean, most of the guys that I meet that are pretty good players at league, they'll have a higher average than me, but they're bowling on very different stuff.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. And so, when did they start implementing like oil patterns?
Oh, dude, since the beginning. Yeah, since the
Oh,
beginning,
really?
since there's ever been really a lane and with I call it modern bowling balls, but ever since yeah, I would say the early 1900s, I would say oil was been put on onto the lane. Now, as the years have evolved, so has technology, and now the way that we create oil patterns is it used to be done by hand, right? You used to have a spray gun, and you used to just spray oil on the lane, and then you would mop it out with a rag. Well, it was actually kind of like a well, it's essentially a rag on a long steel stick, and you would just push the oil around. But now we have machines that are worth $50,000, $60,000 that
Oh,
can
wow.
individually oil specific boards and volumes and be very, very accurate. And so now the ability to design an oil pattern has made the game so much more interesting from a professional point of view because yeah, you can lay down oil patterns that require a whole wide range of skills from throwing it very fast and straight and to next game having to bowl it really slow with a really big hook. And so the player is challenged so
Mm.
much more now than ever before, I believe.
How does
And that
that
probably also.
h-
Oh, go ahead,
yeah,
Yuli.
how does that work as far as so the oil patterns change obviously in your competitions, but how much practice do you get prior to like learn that certain pattern from game to game? Do they switch it up every single game? And then bowling like, let's say you're on fire and I know how accurate you guys are. Let's say you bowl perfectly every time. Does that oil pattern begin to change throughout your game?
Oh yeah, good questions. And you're 100% right in some of those things, like in the assumption that it's not just accuracy that we have to deal with is we are also trying to overcome the future. So every time we throw a ball down the lane, that ball is manipulating the oil on the lane. And so where there once was oil, our ball will go through that track and it will take the oil away. So as 120 competitors are bowling on the pro tour week to week. Every single time someone's throwing a ball down the lane, that oil has been manipulated. And therefore, I have to be able to see the manipulation to an invisible oil pattern. And that is incredibly difficult. It's essentially like imagine you throwing a disc golf, but not knowing which way the wind was blowing until you
Mm.
threw the disc. And then you would make the adjustment only after you say, oh, the wind was blowing left to right. I didn't know that, but now I do. I can make the adjustment. So do we. We can execute a perfect delivery and what we think is a perfect delivery, but the oil has changed. And now the result is a split on a perfect delivery. So we make a lot of our adjustments after the result, and the very best in our game can predict when those adjustments need to happen, and you make them before that you see a poor result. Now, in terms of when we see the oil pattern on the pro tour, we'll get an entire day of practice day. Well, I shouldn't say entire day, it's a 3 hour session. And so all the players can practice on the pattern and we can manipulate our equipment. We can change the surface of our bowling balls to hook more or less depending on what we want to do to the oil pattern. But once the tournament starts and you're off to the races, every game that you move pairs and you go to the next part of the tournament, there's no more practice for you. So you're making these moves lane to lane. You have no idea who's been bowling where and what part of the lane has been manipulated. Sometimes you're fortunate that the shot that you're trying to create has been left alone. No one's been there. And so you might get a little consistency from game to game. And then all of a sudden you come across a pair of lanes where everybody's been bowling where you have been. And now the ball hooks 10 times more and you have to make those adjustments very quickly on the fly. Otherwise, you'll suffer with your score. And so that's part of what I think makes bowling such a truly difficult game is we play on an invisible oil field that's constantly changing. So even when you figure it out, it changes again. And so the puzzle is constantly needing to be completed. And then, like you just said, we have, over the course of a season, we'll play on 20, 25 different oil patterns. And so even when you figure one out, that's it. It's gone for the year. You go on to the next one and it's a new puzzle that you have to recreate and relearn and rediscover. And it makes it, again, very, very challenging. But that's why we love bowling on the Pro Tour is the best bowlers will always rise to the top. And I think that's part of the reason why it's such a beautiful game.
Yeah, it seems like what you're just saying, I could luckily beat you in one bowl, right? If we both went and had one bowl, I could guess right the first time and you could guess wrong the first time and I could beat you. But over the course of 10 frames, you're beating me because you're figuring it out. And you might be like, oh, I need to take spin off. I need to add speed. And I can't do that. Is that right?
Yeah, very, very close to it. Yeah, I mean, one game at our level anyway, you versus me in one game, I would find it very unlikely that I wouldn't figure it out to the point where you had and you could execute at a higher percentage than I could. It would be no different than disc golf. I could beat you on the first shot, right? I could get a par, you could get a bogey. But if we play an entire round, it's very unlikely that I'm going to beat you. Very unlikely. And so that's the same in bowling. You could brag to your friends that you beat me for a shot or two, but if we played enough games or enough frames, I'd be able to come back.
Yeah, that seems like one of the issues that we have with some of the courses is disc golf feels like it's kind of outgrown some courses that we used to play 10, 20 years ago, let's say, where, like you were just saying, we have some holes that the scoring separation is very small. The shots that they're asking for are ones that a lot of people can kind of spray shots and still get birdies. And it seems like that's something that I've always been pushing, that you want to try to create a level of difficulty to where there are gaps, not even just bad, medium, and good, but where it's like the greatest. There's gaps even at the highest of levels, right?
Yeah, you see, the thing that I have often wondered about disc golf and why there weren't some holes that maybe trialed and tested some kind of variation to it was you have the ability, because it's not like regular golf where to increase the difficulty in regular golf, you can narrow the fairways for sure. You can put bunkers in certain locations for sure. But you typically lengthen the course. And not that I'm suggesting we lengthen disc golf, because then in the game of strategy is kind of lost a little bit. And I always wondered why with disc golf there wasn't more man-made stuff on the course to create.
People hate it.
To create
People
strategy. Oh, they hate it? See, I don't know. I kind of figured if you could make a hole that was relatively easy become relatively challenging by placing, like a net of some kind to prevent a very...
Or an inflatable. An
Please
inflatable that
say
you have to throw
inflatable.
through.
Please say
Sure.
I thought he was going to say it, Yuli. That would have been
Yeah, but
that's
I'm
Yuli's big thing. He wants these big like bounce houses, kind of in the idea of an inflatable bounce house. He wants something kind of like that out in fairways that we have to throw through.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'll be real with you, okay? The idea of an inflatable something, I think, and bear with me here, okay? I'm not totally shitting on your idea, all right? But um, from a visual perspective, another reason why disc golf is beautiful is because your environment is nature. It is
Hmm.
beautiful, right? And so when you start putting these inflatable things, it takes away from that natural beauty of the course. Now, you could put a black netting up with, some kind of, I don't know, tape that's not too invasive to say, you're not throwing through here. Like, forget about it. This is too easy. We're blocking this path off, and we're going to make this a little more challenging. And therefore, you're going to have to create strategy. Do you want to go over this part, under this part, or around this part? If you go around it, it's easier, but it makes the hole a lot longer for you. Whatever it is, you design the course with these ideas of implementing structures to prevent the scores from getting too low because too many people have worked the game out on certain courses. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the only thing that you could do, but it's one thing I remember playing going, I'm not very good. And I found a few holes to be like, this is pretty easy. And it shouldn't be. Like, it should never really be easy for someone like
Yeah.
me. It should be always challenging. And then I need to get much better before I can claim to say, this is an obvious birdie hole for me. But I can already start to say that, and I don't think I'm that good.
Yeah, we're in a weird spot, right? Because the way we're obviously a sport that's derived from golf, and so I use golf a lot of times when I'm talking about disc golf. And you've got two types of you have really three options to play golf, right? You can go to a normal course, then you can go to a par three course where every hole is less than 175 yards, or you can go play putt putt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of people that go and play putt putt and really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. They get hole in ones, all this stuff. A putt putt course, though, wouldn't be fun if it was super easy, like you were saying, right? Where there's just like 20 feet ahead of you, no curves, no elephant's mouth, no windmills, just a putt. Like that's not really that enjoyable. So they do make putt putt very, very difficult. Where I think right now, and Yuli, jump in here too. I think right now a lot of like courses are easy putt putt courses to where you can say like you go out and you're just like, I don't really feel like that this hole is that challenging. And you're saying from your side, you would love to see that for you being like a newer disc golfer, you would love to have more of a challenge on these courses. You
Now,
like is that
yeah,
kind of correct with the course layout, I guess, the analogy there?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with like what he's saying with like his oil patterns and what they have to deal with. Because at our level, the courses that we play, if we took him and put us on any of those holes, they're going to be considered difficult holes without a
Correct.
doubt.
Yeah.
And there are so many easier hole. I mean, there's so many just courses riddled throughout the country and throughout like Europe and a few other places that once you get to a certain level, like at the level that we're talking about that we play at, like we're critiquing the best possible players. Like, how do we make these guys who are throwing it 450 on a dot, around corners,
mhm.
over corners, big anhyzers that land flat, out of bounds everywhere? How do we make it more difficult for those guys, right? Because if I went to, there's a little course right next to my house that I love playing, and there's 220-foot shots that you go there, and if I play good, I'm going to shoot between 10 and 14 under. Last year on the Pro Tour, I shot one round double digits. That was it.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is difficult, but there's levels to it as well. Like, I'm not one of the best players as far as even top 20 in the world. Once you get to the top five, and correct me if I'm wrong with this one, Jason, is the top five bowlers in the world head and shoulders above like the next guys, or is the top 10, can they all beat each other any given weekend? In our sport, Brody and I are pretty dang good golfers. But these guys beat us. I mean, how many times did we beat Calvin this year? Maybe I think I beat him 0 times.
I don't think I beat him. Yeah.
So it's not even in the realm. I'm not even saying make these courses harder for myself. I'm saying make it harder for the top guys, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So we don't have that level of the dominance in bowling is not as week to week as you're experiencing with those top players. We would see our dominance over the course of a season.
Right.
Now, the top guys, there's three. There's three of us that I would say are, if I may be so bold, to say that if I were the king of bowling, there are two princes, and they are very, very much wanting to take the crown. And we are jockeying for those positions on a week to week, season to season for the last probably 5 seasons, and probably will be for the next few seasons ahead.
So that's like similar to kind of tennis, right? When you had
the big
Federer,
three,
Nadal, Djokovic kind of thing,
100%.
right?
We are compared to that regularly. The next tier down can beat us multiple weeks in the season. They can win a title, they can win a major championship, but over the course of a season, 4th through to probably 15th, they can then all jockey for those positions. In the sense of where they will finish at the end of the season. Underneath that, it's very unlikely that someone from outside the top 20 will overnight be in the top 5 or top 15. There is a progression that you see within players' careers. Only a handful that I know have gone rookie year 1, year 2, best in the world. Like the environments that we play on are so unique to the PBA Tour. It will take you a season or two just to experience it, learn from it, understand it, create skills that will benefit you on that tour.
How many players are? Sorry to interrupt you, but I feel like this is pretty important. How many players are on the PBA Tour?
And then to follow that up, how many of those players are doing bowling like full time? Like they're making enough money to just be bowling. They don't have like side jobs or anything.
Yeah. So on any given week, we'll have 120 competitors for a regular tour event. Then we'll have events like the Masters, which will get 400 people competing in it. And then for the other major championships, anywhere between, which is usually a limited field based on the event that we're playing, anywhere from 120 to 180. So somewhere in that ballpark is a regular. Now, I want to answer this question. The question of how many of us are earning a living and can do this full time. We have a top 50 exempt. So the top 50 every single week are guaranteed a spot in our tournaments. Beyond that, you may have to play in a qualifier to qualify for it. Some of the events are even smaller. Some of the events can be 64, 68 guys, depending on the size of the venue that we're competing at. Sometimes we go to some smaller places for our smaller markets, but we'll go there. They might not have 52 lanes to compete in. They might only have 32 or whatever it is. And so our fields will decrease those weeks, which makes it a little trickier for those to compete week to week. But of those people that are doing just straight up bowling, I would say the top 20 are doing just straight up bowling with sponsors and their earnings from the tour. They're making a living. Outside of that, someone's side hustling somewhere. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so then
Gotcha.
When's the last time? Because, like, for example, we had one player this year who was ranked, I think, like 77th on the tour, and he won an event. How many times, or let's say in the last, like, 3 years, has there ever been an instance where somebody out, like in that, let's say that 400-person field, somebody who you just never heard of won a tournament?
I wouldn't say that low in the rankings. I think you seem to talk about it very much week to week. I think my mind is very much focused as where does everybody sit at the end of the season? So you play the whole season, and what does that ranking look
Okay.
like? And so through the season, you may see people who, I don't want to use the word shocked, because we're all great players. Like we can all bowl really well. There's a hierarchy. But when you see somebody that you haven't seen before that close to a championship, it happens. Yeah, it happens somewhere once or twice a year. You'll see somebody whom the fans will never have met before, don't know their names, that where they come from. You kind of find more about their story. Once or twice a year, that may happen. For them to win, yeah, rare. It
Yeah.
is rare. Making television is possible, but I can't remember the last time. A no-name player, and I use that with respect because I don't want to
Sure.
name a specific player, but a no-name player made it to a championship final television show and won the championship. It's been a long time since I can say, does anyone know who this guy is? Like, who is this guy? I've never seen him before in my life, and he's bowling great, and he's just won the major championship. I can't remember it.
Makes sense. All right, a couple quick like fire questions here.
All right, far
One
away.
thing in disc golf that a lot of people keep track of is their aces. They retire discs once they ace them. They take pictures. They write their name on the back and all the people that were there. Is that something similar in bowling where you guys are keeping track of how many 300 games you've had?
I think a lot of guys do. I stopped keeping track once I got to 100. Once I got to
Oh,
100 certified professional perfect games. Let me rephrase that. Professional in the sense of competition, just
yes.
not in league play, not in practice or anything. Like in actual competitions, I got to 100, and that was kind of the goal when I was a teenager. And so I got there, and I kind of stopped counting. But there are some guys that keep the markets going to see how many they'll get to. But I've retired in terms of perfect games. I've retired 3 bowling balls because those were
Oh,
the 3 perfect games that I've bowled on television,
Oh,
which
wow.
there's the most anyone's ever done on television. So the 3 balls that I've had to shoot those 300 games, I've got them at home, and I wrote all the details on the actually, I think the very first one I did properly. I put it on a proper ball mental. It has a plaque. It's got all the details. It's really nicely done. And the other two, I've been a bit lazy. I probably need to get onto that and add them to the thing.
dang, that's sick. I just watched a clip with Emmett Smith when he was going to break the rushing record, and he every quarter he took off his jersey and put a new jersey on. So he had 4 game worn jerseys the game he broke his record. So he was able to like give one to charity, give one to the Cowboys. He got to keep one. He obviously, I think he kept the fourth quarter one. But that just reminded me of you having your 3 record balls up there. Like that was the kind of the same thoughts came into my head there. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about kind of where bowling has changed strategy wise. And I first just want to say apologies to everyone out there. It does seem like from a casual fan, because I would say I'm like a casual bowling fan where I like to go bowling and I'll casually watch it on TV when I tune on to ESPN and it's on there. I didn't think there was as much strategy. Once you kind of explained all the oil patterns, now I'm starting to think, okay, there is actually like you're running numbers, you're trying to figure it out. There's strategy involved. Where before I thought it was very much like who can just execute, who can just go out there, and if you hit a strike, great. If you don't, can you pick up the spare? Like who is able to do that under the pressure? And it sounds like there's way more to it than when I was leading on. So I apologize to all our bowling listeners. I stand corrected with that. But I do want to ask you about the growth in bowling because you've been playing for several years now on tour. Where have you seen the growth in the sport?
I think it's the biggest difference from when I first went out on tour to today is the average age of the competitors. So when I was a rookie, and I was a late bloomer as a rookie because I live in Australia. My trajectory of my career took me, well, just because I didn't live here, it wasn't easy for me to just come and play the American Pro Tour. So I kind of started going through Asia and Europe first. So when I got to the US, I got to the Pro Tour. I was 27 years old already. And like I said, that's relatively late, but I was still one of the younger guys on tour at 27. I'm now into my 13th year on tour, and I am well and truly the old person on tour. And most of the guys now are in their early 20s to mid to late 20s. Couple of guys have just kind of clicked over 30, and they are also feeling like they're the old kids on tour. So that's the biggest difference. And what I see from that is that trickle down effect through the community of bowling is we have been for a very long time, yeah, kind of an older generational sport where, you know, you might have even heard your grandparents used to go bowling, or it definitely felt older, and now it feels younger, way younger, a lot more teenagers, a lot more kids are playing, and a lot more in that demographic between 20 and 30 are either taking it up or they're taking it a little bit more seriously, which is, it's awesome because no sport, nothing in this world can last forever without a generation behind it wanting to carry it forward after them. So I've always spent a lot of my time pushing and promoting towards the younger generations because, yeah, without them, bowling and disc golf and any other sport for that matter will just fade away because no one's interested in it anymore. So you've got to keep that spark alive from a young age.
What do you think that, you know, I've seen videos, obviously I'm sure people have seen the Dude Perfect videos and other social media videos that you have put out there. And I'm sure that has definitely helped younger players get into bowling. But what else do you think has helped that younger generation, like you just spoke of? What has helped get those into taking bowling more seriously over the last, 10 years or whatever it may have been?
There has been a bit of a evolution in the technique of bowling. So if you haven't seen me bowl specifically, I was kind of one of the, if not the father of the two-handed bowling technique. And cut a really long story short, it was just when I first started bowling, I was 18 months old. The ball was too heavy for me to use this traditional one arm swing. So I developed my own way to do it. And I got really good at it. And I just, I never had a coach, still don't have a coach. I do everything myself. And I've just kind of allowed my own expression and my own who I am come into my bowling and my style. That now has grown. That technique, when I first started traveling, I was the only one. There was no one else doing it. Now, the estimation is about 30% of the bowlers around the world have either adopted the two-handed technique, started bowling because of this technique. It's fun. It allows you to spin the ball more. It allows you to hook the ball more. And so I think that's been a large contributing factor into the growth into the younger demographic and also its popularity, just because it's cool. It's cool to see your ball hook, and it's fun to see the pins fly around and generate so much more power in your bowling ball. And so the style definitely helps you do that.
It probably also helps too after not be your hand be so sore, because you don't put the thumb in, right? You do just the two fingers.
Just the two fingers, yeah. And like all sports, you do something the wrong way or you don't warm up or longevity, if you have enough wear and tear on your body, you're going to eventually break down. But for me as an individual, like I see all of my competitors for the last 20 something years of my competitive career, I wake up, there's not a pain anywhere. I don't have any soreness. I can bowl forever. And then I see a lot of my traditional players, they go, they have surgery on their elbows, their wrists, their shoulders, they have back surgeries. And I'm fortunate to say that it doesn't happen to me and hasn't happened to me. But because my style is relatively new, I don't know if we're going to see that effect yet. So no one really knows if bowling the way that I do is going to cause the same types of injuries. I guess I'm kind of the first one. They're all waiting to see. They're looking at me, wondering when is he going to break down so we can start to document it. But I'm lucky to say I've been very fortunate injury wise.
Nice. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the money side now, because one thing that we have seen in disc golf over the last few years is a massive growth on the purse. However, a lot of that has to do with just having more people playing in fields, because the majority of our purses are from entry fees. And so I just went and looked at the top 5 earners from 2022 to this year, I guess. And it looks like there was, and again, you can correct me here on whether this is just because people this year won more than last year, but you had 5th place last year take home 201,000. 4th place took 213. Third, 222. These are thousands of dollars, by the way. Second, 274,000, and you were at the top of the list last year with 302,000 for tour winnings. Fast forward to this year, 5th place was a little bit less at 145. 4th place was a little bit less at 175, but then there's a massive jump. You're at 3rd at 338. Someone's at 2nd at 347, and EJ Tackett is at 1st at 458,000. That's a massive jump, no?
Oh, I lost you there for a second.
Oh, sorry. Did you hear any of that? Do I need to repeat that?
No, I got all the way up until you said that there was a massive jump with EJ Tackett at 450,000.
Oh, sorry. We can cut this all out. I'm dying anyways right now. Really, do you have a question real quick?
I can
Yeah,
hear that.
I definitely have a question. One of the
trying to
things when I
overtake this
talk
floor.
to other, athletes, especially at the high level, is I guess the thing that I'm most fascinated with is like crunch time. Like the Tom Brady's and in our sport, like the Paul McBeths and the Ricky Wysocki's. It seems like down the stretch they're able to get that heart rate down and just be clutch. What is it like when you're coming down the stretch and you have one ball, let's say for the win, and you have to get a certain amount of pins? Maybe it's a strike, maybe it's just 9 pins, whatever. That situation, the crowd's there. Is there a massive difference between? There usually is, but what would you consider yourself like pretty cold as far as in your career you've been able to kind of quiet the mind and really perform well under pressure? And is that a thing in bowling? It seems like it is everywhere, but I don't know, kind of deep dive into the mental side for a second. Like going into a tournament, do you just know, okay, I hope I just get to the last bowl because I know I'm going to win type thing?
Yeah, well, my mentality is as soon as I walk into the building, I believe I'm going to win. This week, I'm winning. That's it. Everyone else is here for second. As the week unfolds, depending on how that form is happening, sometimes it's not as easy as I think in my head as it's going to be. But there are probably 2 things about my personality that has really helped my career. The first is I just cannot quit. I cannot quit. And the self-belief without quitting, like no matter where I am in the tournament, for example, this season, I was nearly dead last after the first round of a major championship. And by all stretches of the imagination, I was probably not going to make the cut, but I thought I was still going to win the tournament, and I did. I found a way to bowl some ridiculously high scores to make it to the next round. Then I found another way to catch even more pins and bowl some ridiculous numbers, and then made it all the way to the television final and bowled some pretty clutch strikes to win the championship. And so that's the first part. The second part, which I think is kind of, I would say, when I say it's new, it's a new part of me. I would say the last 5 years, it's kind of, I've learned this about myself. I used to be really fearful of failing in the moment. Like, I wanted the moment to happen. I wanted that clutch delivery, but I was so worried about what if you don't make this? And that fear was so misunderstood and so misrepresented, because I wasn't, like, I loved being there. I wanted to be there. So I couldn't understand why the missing of the shot I allowed to overtake all of the other things that I loved about being in that motion, in that moment. And so I had a conversation with myself where I'm like, I looked around the crowd in one particular tournament, and like everyone there would have given their right arms and left legs to swap places with me. Like, let me be the guy who gets to throw the ball on TV. Like, I want to be that guy. And so this moment of gratefulness and just like, I am so freaking lucky. Like, this is what I do for a living and I'm really good at it. Like, yes, I need a strike here to win. And if I don't strike, I'm going to lose. But what a beautiful moment to be involved in. And so as soon as I flipped it on its head, where instead of it being a fearful moment of missing, it was this moment of gratitude and just pure pleasure to have this responsibility and this opportunity to do this. And all of a sudden, the fear of missing just faded away. Like, miss, maybe it didn't, like, if I did, it didn't hit me the same way. I was disappointed, but it wasn't because I was scared of the shot. It was for another reason. And my shot making and clutch moment striking percentages went through the roof after that. Like, once I just flipped it on its head and said, this is not a scary moment. This is a moment that everyone else in the world will trade you for right now. So why don't you just enjoy it? Why don't you be grateful for it and make it a pleasurable moment rather than a scared one? And now I feel like, you give me that ball, I need a strike to win. Just take your shoes off, mate. It's done. Like, I'm getting this strike. And that's how confident I feel because of the joy that I have in that moment. I'm just pure me in that moment.
Man, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Now, to answer your question, Brody, if you're still alive, you haven't died there.
I'm alive. Go for it. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So the prize money can sometimes be, it can be a little misleading sometimes, because we bowl based off of performances, right? So let's take the NBA or the baseball money that they make as put it into a graph. Like, we see their salaries go from X to X plus tens of millions of dollars over the span of 10, 20 years. Okay. For those types of games, it's really easy to say, oh, there's more money in it now because you're getting paid a salary. In our sport and in your sport, we are paid off performances. We win a championship, we get paid. We don't win a championship, we don't get paid. Or, if we don't make the cut, we don't get paid. So when you're looking at year to year based on how the salaries are going or the earnings, it can be tricky, because the three guys that you mentioned that were head and shoulders this year, we just bowled consistently better than everyone else. And EJ bowled better than everyone else. And so it wasn't that there's tens of millions of dollars more money in our game. EJ just took a bigger percentage based off his performances.
Gotcha.
Anthony and I took bigger percentages of that purse over the course of a season than everyone else. But the total prize pool, which I think sits around $3 million for the season, split over, a wide range of tournaments, that hasn't varied too much. But what we're hoping to see is a large spike in that prize purse, to go from 3 million to, say, 5 million, and then to constantly keep that trajectory going. And so then you'll start to see, well, how much money did 10th make, right? From 2022 to, say, 2026. And if that number is considerably different, 10th position, then we're onto something.
Okay, so you guys have kind of flatlined at that 3 million for the tour purse for several years now.
Yeah, and we're trying to see, well, we see like, some variations, but then also there are other costs involved that go up. And so we're really just kind of keeping up with the inflation of the world. We're not seeing us kind of jump beyond that. For whatever the players are making, let's say we make, just an example, someone makes $25,000 more this year. Well, their expenses were probably $15,000 more than previous years because of flight costs and hotel costs have gone up and petrol and everything else. And so, yeah, we made more, but we had to spend more. So we're not seeing that large jump as we would see it on paper. But we're trying to change that. And I think slowly but surely our partners and sponsors are definitely getting more involved. And Fox Sports is where you'll see the PBA. I think our partnership with them is growing as well. And so we're hoping to see growth.
And that's who you guys have your TV deal with.
We do. We have one with Fox, and we have a very small agreement with CBS Sports for a kind of. It is a part of the PBA Tour season. It's just kind of an offshoot to it. It's not a full-fledged 120 people competitor event. It's the top 8 from a series of qualifying events are then invited into this specialized tournament that CBS hosts. But yeah, every other event is either on Big Fox or Fox Sports 1.
Okay, nice. Yuli, it just told me to have you refresh your browser for some reason. It says it's not recording you anymore. So, you while you're doing that, I'll fire away a couple more questions here. And then we'll get you out of here, Jason. I know you got a flight to catch. So,
Appreciate you.
Okay. Do you guys have a world championship? Is there one tournament that everyone's like, this is the tournament every year?
We have 5. We've got 5 major championships. Those are our big ones. Those are the ones that you want to
Okay.
win. So we have the Players Championship, the Tournament of Champions, the US Open, the Masters, and the World Championship.
Yeah, that's something that I feel like in disc golf right now, I've had this discussion on the podcast a lot, is we have a world championship. It is a major. So all the ones that you just listed, it's in that same category, but it's called the world championship. And it is every player would rather win that tournament than any other tournament. And every fan is going to put way more onus on that tournament than any other tournament. And I think that's a problem of where you have this tournament that's like there's not really anything that sets it apart other than it's one more day than all the other majors. And I feel like that's an issue. What are your thoughts on like if bowling all of a sudden changed whatever, take one of those 5 majors that you just listed and said, you know what, next year we're gonna have 5 majors, but one of them's gonna be called the World Championship.
Well, we have a world championship. We do have a world
Oh,
championship, major championship. But here is what I can hear from you, and what I think separates from us as well is our major championships comparatively to a regular tour title is very different. So a major championship will be 6 hours of bowling every single day for 5 days straight, and then a total of anywhere between 48 and 60 games will be played, and then the television final at the very end for the final 5. And so that is a mentally and physically draining experience to just compete and make it that far into a major championship. That's what
see,
separates it. That's why we want to win those ones, because they have more meaning, not just because the prize purses are bigger, which definitely is a nice bonus. But when I hold up a major championship at the end of that week, dude, I'm exhausted. I am as completely knackered as you could possibly be, just more mentally than anything else, because it has been, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, the mental grind of all these oil patterns constantly changing, the clutch moments that you need to be super physical and sharp at. And that's happening for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then again on Sunday for the final. That's what makes them so valuable to us. It sounds to me like you could probably kind of do the same. Like golf has it, I mean, tennis has their major championships, and what separates them is, they go to 5 sets instead of 3 sets, and there's, different surfaces like, clay for the French, and
Mhm.
Wimbledon has grass, which makes them a little bit more
It's also harder
unique.
to qualify though too for like these golf, like the fields are different, right? Where like our the world championship, like pretty much anyone can sign up for. So I think that kind of hurts the prestige of it, if you will, if like, you know, people that don't play on tour ever are just playing in the world championship as well. Um, but
Well,
what
this goes all
explain
the way back, though. This goes all the way back to when you were commenting about the level of difficulty of the courses. And I was going to make this point, and I never really got an opportunity to say it, but I'll say it now. When you're playing for prize purses that are independently funded by the players, so your entry fees are going into that. If you start
Mhm.
designing courses, right, that are to slow down the very best disc golfers in the world, then you're making it harder for everyone else as well. So, yes, it's harder for them, but it's also much harder for everyone else. That's what we also see when we create an oil pattern that is brutal for the 50th to 100th place player. They are almost eliminated from that tournament win. Like, they know,
Mm.
I'm just not there. I cannot keep up on this oil pattern. So what they ask for is the opposite. Be a little bit easier. Yeah, the top guys are going to be accurate and they're going to be fine. But when I miss a little bit, the easier oil pattern now gives me a chance to keep up with their scores. Now, this is where you and I are going to disagree with the majority, because the majority aren't the best. They're not in that top
Mhm.
20 echelon of players. They're in the bottom hundreds, and they want to be at the top, but they're not good enough. So you either spend years dedicating your life getting better, or you just make it easier. That's the quick way. So we fight that in bowling too. I try to explain to people just making it easier is one way to appease the masses. Everyone, they may not win, but they walk away feeling like I did better than if it was a really difficult oil pattern. They walk away feeling I did okay, but on a really difficult course or a really difficult oil pattern, and they walk away plus, in your case, plus 15 or plus 20, or in my game, minus 200. That's
Mhm.
defeating. You might not get their entry fee back. You might not get them next time. And now they don't add to the prize purse. So now your prizes are failing. So as soon as you steer away from entry fee prize purses, then you can start to create the tour of your dreams. Once you get sponsors that are saying, we'll cover the prize money, we'll cover that. We don't rely on 400 of you guys to put your entry fees in for this. Then you can start to build a tour of the very best in the world, where you are making these courses incredibly difficult with strategies and lane conditions that are brutal, because you're not trying to keep everyone happy. That isn't good enough. It's a really slippery slope. It's a bad balancing act. You know,
Yeah.
tennis and golf and basketball, all these big sports that have millions and millions of dollars, they can design their tours to suit a minimal amount of players, because they don't need 10,000 entries, right? They don't need 500 entries to make this tournament a good tournament. They just need their 128 exempt players.
Yeah, they're top guys.
That's right.
Yeah, one thing I think we struggle, and this the analogy would be you guys showing up to a bowling tournament. Let's say it's a major, and you're showing up, and the oil pattern is an easy oil pattern, and it's the same one every single time you play. So it's not changing. Then that does become who can just execute, right? There's not really any sort of strategy involved. And to me, when you have the word golf in your sports name, course management, trying to figure out how to beat a course and having there be multiple ways to play a hole and trying to figure out what's the best way for you. Maybe the wind's different one day, so you have to play it differently. Having that, I think, adds so much intrigue of where if I did really like dig into bowling and start realizing, oh my gosh, like today the oil pattern's this, he's gonna have to do something different. Similar to golf, they changed the pins around, right? So like some days a hole might be like they're all attacking this hole. Another pin location on that same hole, the next day, now all of a sudden you're seeing people play super defensive. And like to me, that's very interesting not to see the same thing. And I think that is something that we struggle with some of the courses we play, of where it's very straightforward. And we have 4 people play the hole at the same time. And a lot of times you just see the same shot over and over and over and over again.
Yeah,
And
I guess the trickiest part for you as well, and why our environment is easier to deal with this, is we can just, okay, my home bowling center, I can put down a infinite amount of oil patterns. So my environment in my own center can change day to day, hour to hour if I want to re-oil the lanes. Your courses, to manipulate those courses, you either have to wait for the wind to come, or you have to start building man-made stuff. But if you're trying to redesign a course and then allow nature to build the difficulty into it, you're going to wait 10 years for some of these trees to grow big enough to get in the way to make it a difficult course. So that's why I suggested, and I guess to some degree, right, the inflatable makes sense, is they're quick, you put them up, it changes the strategy really quickly, and it allows the players to look at a course that they've known for years, have a very specific way to play it. You're now throwing that out the window, and it's telling them you're going to have to be a bit more creative, or you're going to have to, in this particular course, we're going to make you an excellent, and I could help me with my language here, but do you still call it like a putt? Like, what is your soft close range?
Yeah, putt. Yep.
So you might say we are going to really emphasize on making these guys putt really well, because they're not going to get there into as much as they used to before, because we're putting up these man-made objects that are going to prevent them from the tap-ins or whatever. It's going to be a 18-footer.
Longer putts.
Yeah. 18-footer. Let's see who can putt really well on this course. And then another course you might design it where it's like, we're going to lengthen it, not because the hole is going to lengthen, but the path we're going to force you to make is going to be longer. And so now you might not be able to use a big, draw-in shot. You might have to be like, I'm going to hit this, I'm going to throw this a little shorter because my next shot needs to be the long draw-in one. And again, you can, it's just harder for you because you've got to build it and then you've got to take it down.
It's a lot more expensive,
it's
I
a lot
think.
more expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, if things become too easy, it becomes boring. All of us feel that. Like if I play a game on my phone and I beat it, and every time I play it now, I beat it every time, like I delete the game. Like, where's the challenge? I'm not interested in playing anymore. Yes, the first times you play it, you might enjoy the fact that you're good at it and that you can beat it, but it doesn't take very long and for that feeling to fade away. And I think that's what happens with bowling too, and why we are always pushing our younger players in particular, challenge yourself on more difficult oil patterns, because then the game is renewed. It's not the same feeling anymore. You're having to adjust more often. You are creating new shot shapes because your regular shot shape doesn't work on this oil pattern. And that's exciting. It gives people a purpose to practice. It gives people a purpose to study the game, download content, watch YouTube podcasts like yourselves to maybe learn a thing or two. Like, it just, that's the trickle down effect that sometimes people forget, is it's not just lowering the scores, everyone's happy. Sometimes making it a little harder, everyone can prosper. Coaches prosper. People who make the disc golfs might prosper because now they're starting to learn, oh, I need more variations to my discs. Like, I need one that has a specific loft on it or whatever. Again, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Weight.
Those are some good points for sure, and definitely things that we are in a weird spot right now where you feel like some people are like, I don't want to see change, and then you have others on the other side that are very loud and out. I mean, both sides are outspoken, and they're kind of going in opposite directions. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where disc golf ends up going.
Yeah.
Yuli, do you have time for one more question? Yuli, you got anything for him? I've got
Yeah,
one
I
final
was
question
curious because
before
I,
you
I
go.
don't know if you answered this when we were talking about the major championships, and you said you have a world championship and you have 5 major championships. Is there one of those tournaments that you would rather win instead? Like in traditional golf, people want to win the Masters or they want to win the Open Championship. In our sport, we want to win the World Championships above all, even the majors. Even though we have 4 majors, World Championship is head and shoulders above everything. Is there one of those in bowling?
Okay, I'm going to answer this very honestly, and you're not allowed to make fun of me. Um, so I have 15 majors. I have all of the major championships, and so the reason why the one that I want to win again is the U.S. Open, and the reason why is because it's the only one I don't have 3 of. So,
Makes sense.
so
Makes sense.
listen, I know how that sounds, okay, but it is the truth. So when you're asking me which one do I want to win, I want to win it for that selfish reason. I want to own all the major championships 3 times over, and that's never been. In fact, it's never been done twice over. There's myself and another gentleman that owns all 5 majors. We're the only ones to own them all. I'm 1 US Open away from owning them all twice, and then I'm 2 more US Opens away from owning them all 3 times over. So I'm
Wow.
very
That's
focused on the
incredible.
US Open at the moment.
So would you say that all your major championships, just from let's say all professional players, the majors are equally as important? Like if you win a U.S. Open and let's say you win whatever the other one is, a major's a major in bowling. Like they're
Yeah,
all just the top pinnacle.
yeah. Look, I mean, you may have personal preference for some nostalgic or some
Sure. Okay.
sentimental reason that I don't know. Maybe you grew up and your favorite player won a specific major and you wanted to win it too. I mean, I think most players would argue that if you owned the U.S. Open and that would be your only major, you'd be very happy with the US Open. I mean, you'd be happy with any of them, but you'd be very grateful to get our US Open. It's typically our most hardest event to win. But in saying that, all of the majors are brutally difficult to win it. So it's not
Sure.
like, oh, the US Open is the only hard one and the other ones are on easier. Everything is difficult. It's just that one
Yeah.
seems to be that, maybe 5% harder.
And I'll say this, like when I was looking up your stats and stuff, it says 15 major championships, right? Where in disc golf, if someone won, let's say 15 major championships, but won 5 world titles, world championships, it would say 15 major championships, 5-time world champion. Actually, it would probably say 5-time world champion first, and then 15 major championships. So it's like a separator, even though it's under the same class.
Yeah.
Which I've always thought that was a weird thing. But all right, final thing, and we'll let you go because I don't want you to miss your flight. I'm fascinated with this question. How the heck do you travel with the balls?
Yeah. It's not easy.
Because aren't they like 10 pounds each, roughly? Right?
15 pounds. 15 pounds each.
15.
Yeah, 15
You can only
pounds
put
each.
like 2 of those in a suitcase.
Yeah. So this is where the further up the bowling tree you go in terms of your skill level, the more resource and benefits that you have. So I'm very fortunate that my sponsor, Storm, will give me whatever I want, whenever I want, as much of it as I want. And so if I'm traveling from Australia to anywhere, I'll call my sponsor, I'll tell them where I'm going, and there will be fresh bowling balls for as far as the eye can see that I need. Perfect.
Wow.
From stop to stop, right? When I'm on the pro tour, the PBA does have a dedicated truck to help travel with a lot of the bowling balls. So we can put our ball. So on any given week, I will use anywhere between 6 to 12 bowling balls on any given week.
Wow.
And that's if it's a very testing week, if you're making a lot of adjustments. There might be some weeks that you've just got a great feel. 1 or 2 balls is all you need. You just change your hand position a little bit and you're good to go. But a lot of times you're going through your bag. You're going through your bags, and they're also there as like a what if. Like, what if I need something like this? I got to have it with me just in case.
We are the same. We are the same way where we'll have 30 plus discs in our bag, and we might not ever throw one.
Mm-hmm.
There might be multiple, right? Usually, there might be tournaments where you have like 5 discs that you'd never touch in the entire tournament.
Yeah.
But you're just like, just in case I have that one shot.
I need it. Yep.
I need it. Yeah.
Right
okay.
there.
So there's similarity there. Okay.
So when you're traveling and you don't have those luxuries, it becomes very difficult. I see a lot of guys drive. A lot of guys will just drive from stop to stop and bring their big trucks and put all their equipment in the back. Some guys like to drive anyway. So you'll see players often, they'll help other players out. Say, hey, I'm driving to the next stop. It might be a 10-hour drive, 12-hour drive, 5-hour, whatever it is. And, some of the guys will just say, oh, I can take a few bags for you. And there's enough of those guys that if you're really struggling with travel, we're a very close-knit community as well. Like, it's not, we're there to help you. We understand the grind. We all are away from our families. We know how hard it is to be on the road for 4 or 5 months straight. And so when someone's having not a great season or someone's needing help, like, we're there to put our hands up and say, like, let me figure this out for you. Now, when we lace the shoes up and we're on the lanes, I could murder them all. Couldn't care about them one little bit. But once we come off the lanes, it's very different. So there's that, the PBA truck, and if you're sponsored, makes it a little easier. Air travel is impossible. Yeah, if you don't have sponsors to help you out, or you don't ship the bowling balls, which is also expensive to just ship them, you're carrying your suitcase on the plane with you, and you're packing your bowling balls, and you're only packing a handful of them, which, again, as you know, if you don't have the right disc in your hand for a certain shot, wind type, length, you're just not going to win. You can't keep up if you don't have the equipment. So it can be very difficult for those starting out.
Jason, if you were to just show up, local bowling alley, grab a ball, a little 14, 15 pounder off of the rack, are you shooting a 300?
Yeah, of course. No, I don't know. I don't know. If I was to use like some random house ball and just kind of show up, I think I could bowl if I bowled really well. Like, I think I could pop a big game. I don't know if it would be 300, but I could pop a pretty big one. But I would say out of 100 attempts, there would be 75 of them would be over 200. There'd be a percentage under 200, which is our par score. And then there'd be a handful that, I was able to pop a real big, or maybe 1 out of 100, I'd get all 12 and shoot 300. That would probably be the 1%er. That would be the 1%er. I might just do that and record it. Just see. Let's just see what I would do.
Well, before you do it, let's do it together, because I think this is a video idea. Me and Yuli versus you. We get our combined score versus you. We'll see if we can take you down. I will say I did my first time bowling in a while. I popped off, like, I was very impressed. I got like 160 something, 150, 160, which is really high. And then I barely broke 100 the other time.
Well,
so Yuli, I don't know how good you are.
The highest score I can get is 300. So if you bowl 150 and 151, I can't beat you, which is
exactly. I love it. I love our chances.
I think it's great because I'm an awful bowler. When I was a little kid, we bowled a lot.
There you go.
And I was pretty good when I was like 14. We did like a no tap league with my church, and
you've been in leagues before. I'm getting hustled here. All right. And even worse,
I gotta get my balls shipped to me
with your church. So you've got Jesus on your side as well. Like, come on, man, I got no chance.
Just wait until I pull out the slide down the dragon's mouth. It's a strike every time. Just put a little top spin on it, let it go down.
Yeah, right. I'm putting up the bumpers, baby.
All right, boys. I gotta go.
Quick shout out your sponsors and everything. If people are new to bowling, what shoes should they buy? What ball should they buy? Real quick shout out, and then peace out.
Yeah, listen, any bowling ball that has a Storm logo on it, they're the best. I mean, I have my choice of the litter, and I would always and only ever throw Storm. They just make such great equipment. 3G for the shoes. It's a brand 3G, fantastic quality, love them. If you just want to know anything about me, go to my website, jasonbelmonte.com, or I'm on all the usual suspect socials. Usually you'll find me at jbelmo. Or just
we'll have all
Google
those links
search.
in the description down below too for you guys
Too easy.
to follow.
Or if you want to follow me on
hey,
tour, you can look at my YouTube channel. I do a vlog series where I bowl the major championships, and you can kind of see all the behind the scenes and what it looks like week to week and day to day on the major championships.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Before you close out, just make sure it says 100%, and then that way we'll have all the footage on our end. But I know everyone listening, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jason, and good luck next season.
You got it.
Nice
No
meeting you,
worries.
buddy.
See you guys.